The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the harbor cafe. As Dominic Shaw sat alone at a corner table, his untouched plate of fries growing cold while he reviewed contracts on his tablet. At 42, he had built a tech empire worth billions, but lately every achievement felt hollow. He was so absorbed in work that he barely noticed the young woman and small boy standing beside his table until a tiny voice spoke. "Excuse me, sir, can we share your fries?" Dominic looked up to find a boy of about 4 years old, with sandy blonde hair and enormous green eyes, staring at his plate with undisguised longing. Behind him stood a woman in her late 20s, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Oliver, no," she said quickly, reaching for her son's hand. "I am so sorry, sir. We should not bother you." But Dominic had already seen what she was trying to hide. The way she swayed slightly on her feet. The hollow look in her cheeks that spoke of too many skipped meals. The careful way she held herself, as if conserving every ounce of energy. "Please," Dominic said, pushing the plate toward them. "I ordered too much anyway. I would hate to waste it." The woman hesitated, pride and hunger warring on her face. "We could not possibly, Mommy, please," Oliver whispered. "My tummy hurts." That decided it. The woman pulled out a chair and helped her son sit, then took the seat beside him. Dominic watched as Oliver reached for a single fry, eating it with such careful slowness that it broke his heart. "I am Dominic," he said gently. "What are your names?" "I am Natalie," the woman said quietly. "This is my son Oliver. And I promise we are not trying to take advantage. I just got a job interview call, and we needed to be in this neighborhood. But we have been walking for hours and Oliver was getting so tired. You do not need to explain," Dominic said. He signaled the waiter. "Can we have the lunch special, please?" 2 orders. "And whatever this young man would like to drink." "Chocolate milk," Oliver said. Then looked at his mother uncertainly. "Is that okay, Mommy?" Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, this is too kind. We cannot accept." "You are not accepting charity," Dominic interrupted gently. "You are accepting lunch from someone who eats alone every day and would appreciate the company. There is a difference." As they waited for the food, Dominic learned their story. Natalie had been a graphic designer before her husband abandoned them when Oliver was a baby. She had been managing until a health crisis 6 months ago left her with medical bills she could not pay. They had been evicted 3 weeks earlier. The shelter fills up so quickly, Natalie explained, watching Oliver devour the fries with slightly better pace now. "Sometimes we get a spot. Sometimes we sleep in my car. I have been applying everywhere. But it is hard to get hired when you do not have a permanent address or a phone that works reliably." "What was the interview for?" Dominic asked. "Administrative assistant at a law firm downtown. The pay is not much, but it is a start. If I can just get stable income, I can find us a place to live. Give Oliver a normal life again." Oliver looked up at Dominic with ketchup on his chin. "Are you a dad?" The question hit Dominic like a physical blow. "No, I am not. Do you want to be?" "Because my mommy is really nice and she makes the best pancakes, and she reads stories really good." "Oliver," Natalie's face turned crimson. "That is not appropriate." But Dominic found himself smiling for the first time in weeks. "Your mommy does sound wonderful. You are a lucky boy." The food arrived, and Dominic watched as Natalie made sure Oliver ate first, taking small portions for herself only after her son was satisfied. It reminded him of his own mother, who had raised him alone after his father left, who had gone without so he could have what he needed. He had forgotten that part of his story, forgotten where he came from in his drive to build his empire. "Natalie," he said carefully, "what if I told you I might be able to help with more than just lunch?" She looked at him warily. "I appreciate your kindness, but I am not looking for a handout." I need to do this myself. I understand. But what if it was not a handout? What if it was an opportunity? He pulled out his business card and watched her face change as she read it. CEO, Shaw Technologies. You are Dominic Shaw, she whispered. I saw you on the news last month. You donated $15 million to children's hospitals. Guilty, Dominic said with a slight smile. And right now, I am looking for someone to run my charitable foundation. Someone who understands what it means to need help. Someone who can identify where money will make real differences in people's lives. Natalie stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. The position includes a competitive salary, full benefits, and a housing allowance. You would coordinate our giving programs, work with non-profits, and help decide where our resources go. But I have no experience in philanthropy. I am a graphic designer. You have the most important qualification, Dominic said. You know what it is like to fall through the cracks. You understand the difference between charity that helps and charity that demeans. Those insights are worth more than any MBA. Oliver tugged on his mother's sleeve. Does that mean we can have our own house again? Natalie was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? You do not know us. We could be lying about everything. Dominic leaned forward. 5 years ago, I was in this exact cafe celebrating my first major business success. I was arrogant, self-centered, convinced I had earned everything myself. An elderly man at the next table asked if he could have my leftovers. I said no. I actually said no and threw the food away right in front of him. His voice cracked. I found out later he was a veteran living on the streets. He died that winter. I think about him all the time, about how a simple act of kindness could have made a difference. And I chose not to give it. He looked at Oliver, then at Natalie. When your son asked to share my fries, he gave me a chance to choose differently, to be the person I should have been 5 years ago. Please, let me help you. Not because you need it, though you do, but because I need to remember that money means nothing if we do not use it to ease suffering when we have the power to do so. Natalie reached across the table and took his hand. Okay, yes, thank you. Over the following months, Dominic watched Natalie transform his foundation. She created programs that actually reached people who needed help. She built partnerships with organizations serving homeless families. She designed initiatives that preserved dignity while providing support. But more than that, she and Oliver transformed Dominic. They had dinner together once a week, then twice a week, then almost every evening. Oliver taught Dominic how to build block towers and appreciated the magic of cartoons. Natalie reminded him that success without compassion was just accumulation. One evening, 9 months after that day in the cafe, Dominic arrived at their apartment with flowers and a nervous heart. What are these for? Natalie asked, accepting the bouquet. For being the person who taught me what really matters, Dominic said. For showing me that the best investment I ever made was not in technology, but in people. Oliver grinned from the couch, where he was drawing. Are you going to ask Mommy to marry you? Because I think you should. Dominic laughed. Actually, I was hoping to ask your permission first. Would it be okay if I spent the rest of my life making sure you and your mommy are happy? Oliver jumped up and hugged Dominic's legs. Yes. Does this mean you will be my dad? If your mom says yes, I would be honored. Natalie was crying again, but this time from joy. You do not have to do this because you feel obligated. I am not, Dominic said, taking her hands. I am doing this because I fell in love with a woman who asked for fries and taught me about grace. Because I want to spend my life with someone who sees people instead of their circumstances. Because you and Oliver showed me that the richest thing I could ever have is a family built on love, instead of obligation. She kissed him then, and Oliver cheered, and Dominic understood that his real success had nothing to do with the company he had built. It had everything to do with this moment, this connection, this choice to open his heart when it would have been easier to stay closed. 2 years later, at Oliver's 7th birthday party, a reporter asked Dominic about his foundation's remarkable success. The secret, Dominic said, watching his wife and son cut the cake together, is remembering that everyone has a story. That boy who asked to share my fries taught me more about business and life than any MBA program ever could. He taught me that generosity is not about grand gestures. It is about saying yes when someone needs something small that costs us nothing to give. He pulled Oliver onto his lap. And sometimes, when we share our fries with a stranger, we discover we have been starving too. Not for food, but for connection, for purpose, for love that reminds us why any of this matters. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about choosing kindness over indifference and connection over convenience. Leave a comment about a time when a small act of generosity changed your life. Your story might inspire someone to share their fries today.